Hello and welcome to the Boardroom Buddies podcast. Each podcast is themed and I interview and ask questions of a number of subject matter experts who are also owners of small businesses. And I ask about their specialisms simply to answer questions that are often in our heads, but we never actually ask or get the answer. This week's podcast is about finance for your business. But what do you do when the bank has said no? Well, there are lenders that will help you. And this week I am joined by Steve Deakin, the Chief Executive of BCRS Business Loans. Based in the Midlands, BCRS help mainly micro and SME business owners to obtain anything from working capital that they might need through to doing a management buyout and anything in between. They're a little different to other lenders. They're a cooperative, pride themselves on being much more relationship and people focused than many others. And they don't base their decisions purely on an algorithm. This allows them to be much more flexible in their thinking and their decision making. So I hope you enjoy the podcast and that it inspires you to not feel that there's no way forward if your bank have said no. Hello and welcome to this week's Boardroom Buddies podcast. I'm Jackie Casey, and you will know if you've listened to the other podcasts that it's about answering the questions that business owners have. And sometimes these questions that I've come across have been with the Boardroom Buddies mastermind, or it might be when I'm out networking and someone tells me about the story that they are ready to expand their business, or they have a large project to fund, but their bank has said no. So today is all about funding, and I'm delighted to welcome Steve Deakin to the podcast. So welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Jackie.
Steve is Chief Executive of BCRS Business Loans in Wolverhampton. And today, it's unlikely that you'll hear the chink of glasses or anything like that, because although we're in the cafeteria area in the Science Park at Wolverhampton, the university have broken up for summer, and it's very quiet. So there shouldn't be too many interruptions. Okay, so welcome, Steve, and thank you for joining me. Can we kick off, first of all, just telling us a bit more about BCRS as an organisation? Because I know from being a past board member a long time ago that my perspective is it's a different kind of loan organisation to that you'll find on the internet or on the high street.
Yeah, absolutely. So BCRS is a community development finance institution, which means we're a not-for-profit institution. We're actually a member-owned cooperative.
Ah, yes.
And that means we're not driven by shareholder return. Mm-hmm. We're still very commercial and have to make a profit because otherwise we wouldn't exist.
You can't exist, yeah.
But because we're not driven by shareholder return, we can kind of take a different approach to lending. And our USP really is that we're very people-based lending. Mm. So we've got dedicated business development managers who are all ex-bank trained, mm-hmm. all have banking qualifications, and the difference is we can take the time to meet with the customers and really understand what their proposition is. So it's not based on an algorithm, computer says no credit score. We do obviously have credit policies, but there's some grey in our credit policies, so we can really sit down mm-hmm. and work with the business owner, build a proposition, and hopefully turn what was a no with a traditional lender into a yes with BCRS.
Right, okay. And do you kind of offer the same sort of terms and things like that a bank might offer?
Yes, but so generally term loans like banks would offer. Our loans are potentially more expensive than you'd expect a bank loan to be, but our loans are more expensive because they're generally higher risk because the banks turn them down. And
I see.
Compared to some other alternative lenders in our risk sphere, our loans are actually cheaper.
Right.
Because again, we've not got that shareholder profit to drive. As a not-for-profit, we don't have to get that additional return. Mm-hmm. We just have profits to grow and increase the lending we do. Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that the whole ethos of BCRS is we absolutely love SMEs. If you went and spoke to my team upstairs, that's the reason all of us have got into it for various reasons. So I was an ex-auditor and I loved getting into the bones of what SMEs did.
Yeah.
And there's various different stories like that. There's ex kind of bankers who were frustrated they can't support the SMEs they thought should be supported. Through our love of SMEs, we truly believe they're a force of social good. So all our lending is about economic development in the areas that we lend in. So effectively, we lend to an SME, it grows, it employs people, those people put food on their family's table, they also spend money in the local community, and there's ongoing economic development in that community. And that's really kind of the ethos of what a CDFI does.
Yeah, okay. So do you operate just in the Black Country, or
no,
how far do you go?
Not. We always say West Midlands and environs. So,
right.
So Staffordshire, Stoke, Black Country's a key area for us because it's where our offices are based. Birmingham, Solihull, Worcestershire, Gloucestershire. Do the odd bit in the East Midlands. I'm going to miss an area out now, and people from that area will hate me. Where have I missed?
Sounds like the middle part of England.
Yes, pretty much the middle part of England. Yeah, absolutely.
What's your furthest north and what's your furthest south?
So probably furthest north, kind of, we go up into kind of Stoke, Cheshire, and then probably furthest south, probably Gloucestershire, I would say. We've done the occasional deal in Oxfordshire as well. But because we're a relationship-based lender, it's really important for us to go out and see the business and see it in action to really understand it. So that kind of limits our geographical coverage to an extent. But as we grow, we will put people in the areas that we lend in. And that local knowledge is really important as well.
Right.
Because obviously industry is different from region to region.
Yeah.
And that shocked me a little bit when I came to BCRS, how there are regional disparities in industry and business behaves differently, but there definitely are differences.
Okay, yeah. So just expand on the relationship lending bit. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I kind of say we like kind of relationship managers used to be in the banks for this kind of level of lending, and there still are brilliant relationship managers in the banks, but at the kind of level of lending we do, people generally don't get a relationship manager. Yeah. So what we'd do effectively is we kind of hold people's hands to get them through the loan process.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah.
And give them advice. I guess one of the proudest things for me is when I'm in the office, and we don't actually get any money from this, but it's a brilliant thing. And a BDM's in, and they'll be taking a phone call from a customer, giving them 2 or 3 options for pension advisors or an accountant. And it's just brilliant that they've, from that one loan transaction, they've got that trusted relationship in there, that ear to go to for the business owners. So that's something we probably don't shout about a lot because it's not what we're selling, but it's a nice added kind of add-on.
Yeah. And of course you can't, I suppose, give advice on that, can you? Because it's not your area.
No, and there's all sorts of loopholes and wormholes you'll go down if start giving pension advice. And, absolutely.
Okay. So what sort of thing do people fund then in their businesses?
Lots of things. Generally, a lot of our loans are kind of for working capital, stroke growth capital.
Okay. Yes.
So a customer's got a new order, and they need to grow their team to fulfil that order and buy the kit to fulfil that order or the stock to fulfil that order. But we also do asset purchases. We've done a number of MBOs, MBIs recently.
Oh, right.
We've been quite successful in that space. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting actually that COVID seems to have, mentioning the dreaded COVID, COVID seems to have brought some MBOs, MBIs to the forefront. I think you've probably got business owners who are very proud of their business, have got through the last 2 years and thought, it's time for me to hand my business on. Being the decent people they are, they want to hand it on to their existing team. Mm-hmm. So we've seen quite a few opportunities in that area. And we quite often work alongside the bank because it's not necessarily a complete no from the bank. It might be,
I see. Okay.
We can fund 50% of it, could you do the other 50%? Or sometimes it's a property deal and we're from the deposit.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so we're very, very flexible. And the thing with the bank is we're not competition to the bank either, actually, because of why we do what we do. When when we get a business that goes back into the mainstream banking because they've had 2 or 3 years experience with us, they can now pass the credit score and the credit test.
Yes.
That's job done for us. That's like, we absolutely want to get people back into mainstream finance.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I've come across quite a lot of people who've, they've won a new piece of business, but they've got to buy the materials.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
most of the time that's got to be paid for up front.
Yes, yeah.
Or 30 days, and they just don't have that, particularly after COVID when, everything stopped for most people.
Yeah, and credit terms seem to have tightened, which hasn't helped. And
No, well, it's the state of play at the moment, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So how, or can you explain a bit more about the application process for someone in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So most applications either come through, direct applications come either through the phone or onto the website. There's some very simple initial questions that will field whether it's something worth looking at or not.
On the website?
Yes.
Oh.
Because what we also like to make sure we do is if it's going to be a no, we want to tell the business no as soon as possible. Because there's nothing worse than having the decision prolonged for a month and a half and then it being a no, and you're a month and a half down the line and you've got the same decision that you could have had on day one. If after those few questions it looks like it's a viable proposition for us and something we could work with, one of our business development team will get in touch, talk through the proposition, ask a few more questions that could turn it into a no early on, but generally we work to try and make it a yes. And then if it looks like it's going to be definitely be in the yes camp, we arrange to go out, meet the person, gather some more information, and then go through our credit process from there.
Yeah. I think when you start to think about loan applications, your brain freezes because of the complexity of most of them. So how do you help? Because you said earlier that you kind of support your potential clients through it.
So our application form's fairly straightforward. Because we've got the relationship-based approach and you'll have the direct phone number for the business development manager who's dealing with you, not just a kind of generic switchboard. They're always there at the end of the phone to help. We also might bring in advisors as and when we think you need advisors, but most people have got pretty decent advisors, so it's just saying you need a cash flow forecast, go to them and get a cash flow forecast. It actually amazes me how many businesses, once we've got them to do a cash flow forecast, then actually realise how useful a cash flow forecast is. Because it's probably one of the most vital tools, isn't it? Cash is kind of the reality of everything.
I advocate that with all of my clients, that they, if they, even however simple it is, having a cash flow can be so informative and can give you so much information to make decisions to prevent you from, making the wrong one, but also to help you plan for the future.
Absolutely. And it can show you where those kind of squeeze points are going to be. And if you know about them in advance, you've then got time to go out and try and get finance to support those squeeze points, or slow down, or make whichever decision you need to make to make that business decision the right business decision.
Okay. Brilliant. That sounds really good. I think that most people who are in that position of, where do I go next, might not know. Is it something that can they find you on the internet and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're pretty high up on the Google searches. We'd like to be higher, but we're a small organisation, and certain other organisations have more money to spend on making sure they're at the top of a BCRS search, but they should remain nameless.
Right. Okay.
And the other thing I'd recommend is there's obviously we get a lot of our introductions through introducers, so through what's known as finance brokers, and there's some really good ones out there. I won't know names because we use quite a lot of them and I don't want to have favourites. Perhaps go to the NACFB website, which is the Federation for Brokers, because what they will do is, and I'm not trying to put people off coming to BCRS, of course come to BCRS, but they've got a whole of market perspective.
So that's the NACFB.
And that's their kind of national federation, and that will give you a list of brokers in your area. But what the broker will do is quite often build a package of finance for you. So they might put some invoice discounting in, or asset finance might be appropriate along with a term loan from us. But they've got the whole of market approach, which is really useful. That's not to say don't come to us, because we will do an amazing job.
So you'd pick up the phone and help someone anyway?
Yeah.
What other things you mentioned the cash flow a little while ago. What other things, if a business owner is thinking about getting some funding or applying for it, what else do they need?
So kind of the standard things, well, it probably isn't standard things if you're not in the world of finance. So historical accounts, fairly up-to-date management accounts. We'll also look at the owner's personal finance record.
Right.
We get them to do a credit search so it doesn't leave a mark on their credit history. We then use some things internally now which actually make the burden a bit less. So we used to need 6 months bank statements, but now we use an open banking login which will get those 6 month bank statements automatically. So it saves the business owner having to trawl through and find 6 months worth of bank statements.
Yeah.
And then really our business development people will kind of sit down and talk through the business. A lot of lenders insist on a business plan, but actually, have you ever seen a bad business plan?
True. Yeah.
So we kind of build that business plan and don't put people to the expense and the time resource in putting that business plan together unnecessarily. We kind of build up our business plan through our application.
Right.
And that's what we're assess the business on.
Yeah. So in a way, you're kind of developing that future plan.
Yeah, and I think
incorporating the business loan.
I think quite often the process probably helps people think about their business, because the questions we're asked might be, we might ask a question about, customer concentration. Are you too reliant on one customer? It's brilliant when you're a business person. You kind of think, we've got this brilliant blue chip customer, but actually someone asking you that question might make you think, actually I should probably not put all my eggs in one basket, because if they suddenly change their minds, you're in a lot of trouble. So I think we ask some quite good searching questions that probably help the business owner think about differently about their business, because we all know in the day-to-day of your own business, it's someone else coming in asking that really obvious common sense question that you're too involved in the detail to actually come up with yourself.
Yeah. And we find that in the mastermind group as well, that quite often it's a discussion with one of the business owners that we're having that leads another one to say, hang on a minute, I just realised then that I need to do something about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's, great. That has been really interesting. So BCRS Business Loans, Wolverhampton, how do they get in touch? Just online or?
So online's probably best.
Okay.
www.bcrs.org.uk.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, and that will have all the details. It will also have the phone number if you'd rather pick up the phone. But yeah, please do get in touch, and we'll do everything we can to turn a no into a yes.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate that.
Okay,
Thanks for joining me. I do hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Boardroom Buddies podcast. Do subscribe for more podcasts, and it would be lovely if you shared it on your favourite podcast platform. If you have any questions or you would like to talk any more on the topic, then do connect with me on LinkedIn or email me on jax, that's JAX, @jackiecasey.consulting. And thanks for listening.